So I will be talking about some disadvantages I can envision when looking at the smart grid future or the big data future. And I will try to picture a solution which might be the way to go, but unfortunately I think it will cost us, and we will have to decide what world we would like to live in. This is a picture of what we at KIT think the future might look like. It is a planned energy grid, which is a test bed for the future technologies, not only for varying the power consumption, but also, like we need to, if we look at the sun, this is a part of our Energy Lab 2.0, where we have it looks chaotic. It is not. It is, we are looking at how the different directions of where the sun is varies the power produced by these PV. But we're not only looking at dealing with renewables and enhancing the variability of the power consumption, but we're also looking at transforming power. It is multimodal. Here you see the Biolic plant, which turns waste into oil, consuming energy, so we can kind of shift energy which is not needed right now to this process to produce oil for later need. And if we envision a power grid which not only gives great variability for power consumption, but which also allows to transform different kinds of power into other kinds, then we have an architecture where all relies on ICT. And as we know, ICT can be hacked. And this is a great concern. I think the first wake-up call for us was Stuxnet. Stuxnet was an attack on the Iranian atom program for the development of maybe bombs. And what I think is interesting about Stuxnet is that it was a very subtle attack. It was not an attack where they destroyed the plant like they could have with bombs or something, but they kind of slightly disturbed the process so that the engineers there thought it's their fault that they don't get the yield to produce good uranium. And I think this might be what the future of attacks looks like. We will have future wars where our cyber infrastructure will be attacked, but we will not see the signs of it. It will just slow down our economy by 3% or something. It will be a very hidden and subtle attack. And we have to think about even government-level attacks, meaning other states trying to interfere with our economy and with our power supply. So the question is, it's a rhetoric question, do we trust in our IT systems? Yeah? No. Not even the experts know how to make our government secure. But why is this so? Why do we have so much trouble ensuring security? And I think one reason is IT security is highly non-trivial, and to my opinion, this is because we're not having a probabilistic phenomenon, but we're dealing with a malicious and intelligent attacker. Like if you look at a CD, it has an error-correcting code which is made to correct random errors, meaning if you scratch your CD, then these scratches can be corrected by reading other bits, by looking at checksums. But if you know how to scratch a CD, It will not be read. However, if we look at digital signatures, they have to ensure that every change of the document yields the digital signature invalid. So that's the difference. We're on one side thinking about something like lightning strikes, where we can do the calculations, how probable it is and how much does the protection cost and is it worthwhile. Whereas on the other side, we're dealing with an intelligent attack which we don't know yet. And it's very, very hard to do any calculations. And it's very hard to even see if a protection is worthwhile in the end. I will give you an example, a historic example, which shows again that this difference between a probabilistic scenario and a malicious scenario makes IT security so difficult. It is the EC card. We know there are skimming attacks, meaning your EC card can be copied. You can copy the magnetic stripe. And for that reason, they introduced a computer chip to this. This computer chip plays a challenge-response protocol with the ATM machine. So you're not asked the same question every time, what's on your magnetic stripe, but you're asked a new question every time. And so just copying one communication doesn't help you to withdraw money later. That's a very good solution. In case the chip is not working, you have a fallback solution to the magnetic stripe, so you have great availability as well. An attacker, of course, copies the magnetic stripe and disables his own chip. Then the fallback solution will be used and he can again withdraw money. And we have kind of two security solutions which cancel each other out. And this is one example why it's so difficult to get security. You have to look at the whole system. And if we look at what we're doing in security right now, it looks to me like this. Conventional IT security seems to have failed, meaning we're just patching. We are building a complex system, and then we are waiting what happens, and then we are kind of trying to fix here and there where we saw something happening. As I said before, some things we don't see. But I would like to step back, as in the talk before, and would ask myself, does it have to be this way? Or is there a different approach? And I would like to propose an approach which is more science-like. And the first question we could ask is, what can I know? Meaning, of which facts I can be really sure of. Meaning, if we're talking about science, so why are we pretty sure that the CERN discovered something which is called the Higgs boson? Or why are we sure that the planet Neptune really exists? Or which makes us certain that pi is not a fraction? And I think the reason is it is logically reducible to falsifiable assumptions. And because scientists are very jealous about each other, they are always trying to falsify the assumptions others use. And they are closely watching the logic others use. And I think this is the way we should go for a new IT security. Because the way it is right now is, are we sure this token is secure? We buy it, we don't know what's inside, we have to trust blindly. And we know that this might not be the best to do, especially this token turned out during the Snowden revelations to be filled with bad randomness and predictable. So what I would like to propose is a scientific approach. An approach using cryptography as a paradigm for cybersecurity. And the approach is as such. We have to build models, and in these models we have to make assumptions about what the attacker can do and what he cannot do. Like, is he limited in computational power? That's a standard assumption. Is he limited in where he can go? Can he go to Alice's office? Can he break into Alice's office? Can he break into computers? Can he break into all computers? We have to make models, assumptions, and then within the model we can prove that the countermeasures we take are really effective. And then we will learn something new whenever something is insecure. Before it was like this. Something was insecure, oh, bad. We have to fix it somehow. Now we will have a scientific progress. We will learn from everything that goes wrong, because either our model is not good enough, we haven't modeled all the things that can happen within the system, our assumptions could be wrong, but we learned something. And to show you how much I'm convinced that cryptography might be the way cybersecurity can in future work, I will show you one example. And this is about cryptography being more than ciphers. It's about coin toss via telephone. If you look at a large smart grid infrastructure, then it might happen that some systems mistrust other systems, because it might be that some of the computers have been broken in. So mistrust is something very interesting. And we have a very nice example for how to deal with mistrust. It is, imagine Alice and Bob were fighting over something. And they couldn't agree, and so they decided to flip a coin for the decision. However, they are separated, and they are only communicating over a telephone line. And now you can imagine that if Alice says, oh, Bob, I will flip the coin, and then I will tell you if you won or not, that Bob will not accept this. So there's a big problem how to deal with mutually mistrusting parties in a large system. And here, there actually is a solution. And the solution is, I will first tell it to you using a telephone book, then I will try to explain it with a little bit more cryptography. Imagine Alice and Bob would both own a telephone book in the conventional way, meaning for a name I find a number very easily, whereas given only the number, it is kind of taking some time to find the name. And now they could do the following. Alice flips a coin, and depending on the outcome of the coin, it's either left or right. What she does is she opens the telephone book at a random location, and if it's left, she picks an entry from the left side, a random entry, takes the number, and memorizes the name. Then she tells Bob the number. Bob will flip a coin and will say, oh, it's left or right, depending on the outcome of the coin on his side. And then Alice will tell him whether he was right or wrong. But she will not only tell him if he was right or wrong, she will be able to prove it to him by giving the name, and then Bob can check if the name and this number was on the left or on the right side of the telephone book. And now if we think about encryption mechanisms, where the decryption is unique. You can do the same thing. You can kind of encrypt the coin toss, send it to Bob. Bob will then guess what's inside, and Alice cannot only tell him if he guessed right or wrong, she can prove it to him by sending him the key. So cryptography can solve paradox situations. Another example is that we recently managed to find a provably secure, meaning in a simplified model, provably secure way to do software protection, which is, I think, something very necessary for the future, because if things are more and more controlled by computers, then all the intellectual property will be within the software. The plans of the future will be kind of universal, and only the software will make it do what we want to do, and we have to protect it against manipulation or copying. And now the problem with this approach that we do model things, and we try to, within the models, prove that our measures we take are effective, the problem is that real systems are complex. You have kind of a physical layer where you can imagine hardware trojans being implanted, like you don't know if you can really trust your machine if it is not doing something in the background, in the hardware, what you don't know, even if you would trust your operating system. But we don't even trust the operating system, because there are zero-day exploits, meaning generally unknown weaknesses of the operating systems, which you can buy at Hacking Team or on the black market. And there are faults in the communication protocols which make the communication vulnerable. And for this approach of modeling and proving, we often have not even a definition of what security means for our application. The same is true for smart grids. We fear that some attacks might have physical impact. But usually when talking about smart grid security, people talk about malware and firewalls, and are not talking about how to really prevent physical damage from cyber effects. And of course, there are human errors, so we have to take care about the usability of the software as well. And to my opinion, we can get handle on this complexity only if we try to model on each layer, meaning we have this models, assumptions, proofs approach on each layer, and we try to propagate guarantees from the layer down to the layer up, and then we can rest on the assumptions which are given to us, on the guarantees which are given to us from the level below. And for that, we need an interdisciplinary, large-scale effort, I would say. And at KIT, we are building this Energy Lab 2.0 also as a security test bed. And now you could say, oh, he started out and said, oh, you cannot test security. And now they are building a big security test bed. How does this fit? The reason is, of course, you cannot test all aspects of security, because an attacker is malicious. You cannot know what he does. But your security mechanisms should not interfere with the system. You should not kind of bring delays to the system. So we can indeed test our security measures in the real world and see if it works. However, the security guarantees, those cannot be tested. Those can only be given by analysis within models. And I think that's the approach we should be taking. Thank you.